Hey, you two, mentored one here. I'm gonna philosophize a little bit, a little philosophy chat, and it sounds cheesy as hell, but it's because I feel like I have to. I really do feel like there's something super fishy going on in this world. I don't pretend to have answers. I don't necessarily buy into what I laughingly call tinfoil nation. If you ever seen the movie Signs, when Mel Gibson's character walks in and his family's got all tinfoil hats wrapped on their head, there was a legitimate thing going on, right? But they were so freaked out that they were willing to try anything. I don't necessarily agree with all that because I think if there is a power trying to deceive the world, etc., that would be a tool they would use because it's a form of fear and panic. And there's some people that are just saying, "No, I'm not afraid," but my eyes are open. But the human mind is very easy to deceive. If you don't believe that, I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, do some research on, hypnagogic states and TV and how that affects your mind with the flicker rate and all that stuff. It messes with you when you're bombarded with something over and over again. It becomes embedded in your subconscious whether you want it to or not. That's kind of why we can kids can be messed up from a young age based on experiences. Um, so I kind of feel like I need to share this in case there's somebody out there who has something to share with me. If they hear something and you got something to share with me, please by all means. Maybe it's a key I need to understand something, and maybe something I'm going to go over is a key you need to understand something. So we'll talk. We're going to talk about the nature of the soul, and I think that there is a case to be made that no one can deny the existence of a spiritual or a soul. You can call it consciousness if you like. I know science is attempting to reduce consciousness to mental states, and I'm going to go over that because that's complete rubbish, and that easily is provable. Now, when I say proof and truth, I want you to understand something. I'm not talking about empirical things, things your senses can measure. Because if you believe that the only things that are real are the things your senses can touch, I would honestly and humbly encourage you to stop watching the video because that is complete insanity. Because I can ask you simply love. What is love? If you don't have a mind to process the idea, the concept of love and what it means, love is just mating. It's just nature. So if you believe you're just animals, then stop pretending you're in love. Stop doing the things of love. You can't, right? It's part and parcel. So that's something that exists that you can't directly perceive with your senses. And you can think of a thousand other things. I'm sure truth, justice, the American way. You get the idea. There are all these concepts that exist only as ideas, not in the physical world. So if you believe the only truth or anything like that is something you can sense, you're sorely misguided, friend. I really encourage you to examine that thought. The empirical world is only a small piece of what's out there. I can give you another solid demonstration. How about visible light? You've never seen infrared light with your own eyes because you can't. How do you know it exists? Because you've been told it does by science. You have no direct perception of it. How do you know it exists? You know the idea of it, right? You can't directly perceive X-rays, but we have telescopes that are measuring them. Again, that's another example. So don't think that the world only consists of what your sensory information can accept. So I believe there is truth to the soul and spirit, and I'm going to demonstrate a possible line of thought that proves this. So you and I are conscious. We're aware that we exist. Okay, I'm not going to speculate on what we are or etc. But that's a fact. You can't say you exist unless you exist, nor can you say you don't exist unless there's an existence to deny. So you see the trap there. You can't negate consciousness because you would need consciousness to do so. That says to me that consciousness is fundamental to the universe. If consciousness comes out of the universe, which again, since we're conscious beings having this discussion and we're conscious of ourselves, at least I am, that means that consciousness must have come out of is part of the universe. It evolved, if you will, from the universe, just like you could say gravity seems to be fundamental to the universe. That means it's something that is coming about that I mean some scientists and stuff will argue it's a matter of complexity via evolution and yeah, but the mechanism of evolution also seems to be part and parcel of the universe. And since consciousness seems to be a product of it, I mean, follow the causation, follow the chain of events. There, where's it coming from? Where's conscious sentient life coming from? It's just random combinations evolve. Oh, it evolved over time by random. Is it really that random then? Because conscious minds are kind of required to be aware of the fact that they evolved to begin with. The whole thing is a big circular loop that is like a machine that feeds itself. It you can't get out of it. So consciousness is the fundamental fact of existence in the universe, without which we wouldn't know that there was a universe at all. Conscious minds have to exist. And if conscious minds exist, let's take, for example, if we took all the conscious minds of every human being that ever existed, and we were somehow able as to experience all that together, you could say that that's the collective soul of mankind, right? If you could have the thoughts and the feelings and the lives of every human being together, and you could go through all of them and experience all of that, I think that's reasonable to say you would be looking at the collective soul, or at least the collective mind of mankind. Now extend that out. If there are other living creatures on other planets and stuff in this universe, all of that together, you would say, is the collective conscious soul of the universe. Everything that's known, experienced by all conscious life. Now, what about dimensions? What about other universes, and on and on? So, at some point, does it start to look like the stars are neurons, the galaxies are neurons, and there's like the gravitational waves are like the neural fibers connecting all the cells together, like a giant brain or mind? Again, just as an analogy of thought, even though if you look at some of the pictures from like X-ray and dark matter pictures, a universe kind of looks like a brain to me. But I mean, I guess that's just brain recognizing patterns and making stuff up. But either way, consciousness seems to be fundamental. If you combine consciousness of sentient creatures, you approach a collective or a hive type of thing. I don't necessarily want that experience, but I'm saying we can think about it. We can imagine that the collective souls of all these things, and you go bigger and bigger, and you keep grouping them together. Would you approach something that we would call God, the consciousness, all consciousness as one? You would know everything that could be known, right? That to me is a pretty close definition of God. But I'm not arguing for God in this. I'm saying I'm arguing for the soul, and the soul and the emotions, the thoughts, and the experiences of a self-aware creature. I think is a good definition, which is the mind to me. The thoughts, emotions, experiences is the mind. So the mind of a self-aware creature, again, grouping them bigger and bigger, etc. You can share your life with somebody, and that's why people go berserk for pitches and all this other stuff. You're sharing things. Now that becomes a part of your experience once you share it. You're conscious of that. So you're no longer just conscious of your own experiences, which is interesting. I mean, you can't experience it directly, but we strive to share our experiences. Why? Is that a drive to make sure that we know we're not alone in the soul? Either way, I think consciousness is a fundamental fact. I think that we're aware of our experiences, feelings, and thoughts is indication of a mind. And the mind is not your brain. Okay, the chemicals and the electricity that scientists study. Oh, when you look at the color red, this brain lights up. When you hug a puppy, this part of your brain lights up. That's happiness. No, no, it's not. A blip on a screen that scientists associate with a behavior doesn't mean that that's what it is, guys. Because you and I both know that the electrical chemical signal in the brain is qualitatively different from what you actually experience, what you're conscious of experiencing when you touch a soft little puppy or whatever it is you happen to like to play with. Okay, keep it clean. We all, I mean, none of us are going to say that, yes, I experienced a electrical tingling in my brain and that's it. No, you're going to describe it in terms of how it felt to you, what you think about it in relation to other experiences you've had. And yes, scientists will find a correlation of activity in the brain when you are doing these things. That doesn't necessarily mean that that activity is that thing. Just like you could look at a computer and see the electricity moving in a certain circuit while you're playing a game. That electricity in that circuit is very different from the quality of the game, the experience, the qualitative experience of playing the game. What it feels like to you, what it feels like to a conscious being, a self aware being. So the science is trying to convince us that the measured, the quantifiable data coming out of these activities and experiences is the experience itself. No, it's not, and it can never be. Now, the question you can ask the question, well, without the brain and the chemical, electrical things, etc., we wouldn't have the mind. the hardware generating the software is that argument. And it may be, but why can't it be that the mind has generated the body and the brain? How do we know that we're not, the manifestation of our own thought of ourselves? There's not really any way to know that. Is the quantifiable data the scientists are measuring the effect or the cause? How do we can't even determine that yet. But I think if we can determine consciousness being fundamental to the universe, a part of the universe's system, part and parcel with it, then it would, to me, stand to reason that a brain or a body as we know it wouldn't necessarily be required for a conscious, self-aware being. We can certainly imagine beings that maybe exist just as energy and don't require any physical form. Or what about a creature that is a crystalline type of structure? Totally different. So let's not assume that the quantifiable nature of our brain equates to the experience of our conscious reality. Open up to the possibility that consciousness and self-awareness is something that's fundamental and can express itself in many different ways. We have tons of movies about self-aware robots, about alien life forms, interdimensional beings, and there's a reason why these things manifest in our entertainment, because I think deep down we know it's possible, and we know we can see all the animals and creatures around us in nature, and we know that self-awareness or consciousness. I'm not going to look at my cat who's super content to claw my leg while I scratch his ear and say he's not aware of himself at all. That's ludicrous. Of course they're aware of themselves. They know they like certain things. They know their environment, etc. They may not be as complicated as we are, but that's the point. Let's not get hung up on the hardware about what's going on, because it may be that consciousness has created us, has created the tool so that it can use it. If you need to build a house and you have no tools, you need to get your tools first. So maybe we're a tool of consciousness. Maybe we're a tool of the soul, and the soul is not a manifestation of the tool. All right. If that makes any sense to you, then good. If not, then you're probably right there with me, scratching your head most of the time. So let's just ponder it for a bit, and I think that if you understand the nature of what I'm talking about here, you'll realize that the soul is a lot bigger than any one human lifetime. It's a lot bigger than we can possibly imagine whatsoever. And it may be fundamental to the reality that we see, because without it, there would be no reality to see. So I appreciate you guys listening to this video. I hope you think about it. And if you have anything to share with me, any thoughts and ideas, I definitely would appreciate your comments. All right. Peace out, guys.